Forrest.Chat SoapBox. Today we're here with Amanda Ireland. Amanda is a candidate for the Council of, or the Shire of Augusta, Margaret River. Welcome to Forrest.Chat SoapBox, Amanda.
Thank you very much, Paul, for having me. Maybe it was a little early slip that I was already a councillor, but I'll take it. I'm a candidate.
Apologies. You're a candidate.
I have nominated as a prospective councillor and in the throes of campaigning. So,
all right. My apologies for
no,
putting you up there before
I'll
you're
take
actually
it.
there.
I said.
Fantastic. All right, we'll jump straight in, Amanda, because that's what we're doing with all of this electioneering type stuff. We're telling people what we're up to.
Terrific.
Actually, just a moment. I'll just change screens so people can see what we see. There we go.
Terrific.
All right. Do you want to tell us about...
Give you my
yourself?
elevator
Yeah.
pitch outside of the 180 characters that was required for my profile. I come to this space as with a little bit of experience in terms of age and practicalities. I've never run for council before. It's actually never been something I've considered before. My life's been pretty full as a teacher, librarian. Then I moved into the early years sector by kind of default. I was a manager for school-aged care in the Shire of Augusta, Margaret River. So I actually worked for the council. And from there, when I left running there before school, after school and vacation care programs, I went to the East and West Kimberley and worked in some pretty difficult situations trying to get there, the childcare services up and running. For me, the early years sector and what we might call childcare and daycare is incredibly important to a regional town and also a remote town. Yes, and in the cities too. But if we're not going to provide adequate, appropriate care of our little people so that both parents can go outside of the home and work in this climate, then we're severely lacking an opportunity to increase the economic well-being and growth of our towns. And notoriously, that's a really difficult job to achieve. It extends to housing and, there's a myriad of things that. So I've come at that angle from a manager's and a leadership role. So I have vast experience in that area of life. My husband and I owned a family business as well for some 27 years. I also cared for my husband while he was terminal and palliative. So I have hands-on experience with all that goes in that social services setting and being able to advocate for one's loved one's health. And I'm a pretty big active citizen, always have been. That's another side story that is getting into that and why. But I feel really comfortable in giving back. So this and sharing knowledge. And so in that setting, I have the ability to listen, research and look for alternative solutions when one might not fit into the square box, and also advocating for community wellbeing, marginalised, and so forth. So that's my elevator pitch.
Fantastic.
In a nutshell, not very small nutshell. I'm a mum of three adult children. I have grandchildren. They live in Perth. My children are were very sporting growing up. I can't say that I was particularly sporting, but I loved their participation. My husband was the sporty one. So I loved supporting them at that grassroots level, being involved in clubs and giving back that way, and watching them develop as young people, learning for themselves through participating in sport. Then I've had all three of them choose their own talents and went down that road. So I have a professional musician who travels the world and is very often, well, he's just flown in from LA. So I'll be excited in the next week or two to see him, his partner, who's also a musician, and their first child, who's only 5 months old, come and stay with me for a bit. My adult daughter studied fine arts. She's a mum and has a terrific relationship. And so I'm very lucky in that setting. And my youngest daughter is a dancer and still at 33 teaches contemporary ballet. So I'm all about the arts. I'm all about the sporting groups, recreation, leading, giving us a sense of community, but actually being the fabric of community wellbeing. So there's another elevator pitch.
Absolutely. In my non-political podcast, I also often talk about the difference between what's called STEM, so science, technology, engineering,
Yes,
mathematics,
know it well as a teacher. Yep.
and what's called SHAPE. So
Yep.
that's the social sciences, humanities, and arts for the economy.
Yep. Yep.
So, yeah,
and I
quite
love that.
different.
I love that, Paul, because realistically, if we're going to think about environmental stewardship and the impact of climate change, we need to be thinking about innovation, and we need to be thinking about cost-effective measures, because we are in a crisis, an economic household crisis in terms of how far do we stretch our dollars and cents when we're raising, and as our seniors are trying to, live productive lives now, without having to go out to work if they choose not to, or not capable to. Yeah, I think that's an area of life that we really need to be supporting and advocating for.
Yes, absolutely. The SHAPE, and your daughters or your family are really demonstrating how that all comes together as, that element of society. They're all in that space. So,
yep, exactly. Living proof.
Living proof, absolutely. All right, shall we move on to the next?
Yeah.
Make sure my things all work. So what led you to choose to become a candidate, Amanda?
Well, potentially I'm slightly different to other candidates. I'm not going to say I'm stand out on a shelf by myself, but really it came about from retirement that was potentially brought forward for me as I cared for my palliative husband. So I was working once we returned from the Kimberley, when his illness had seemingly got the better and was was turning at a faster pace. I mean, he'd lived and which we were aware it was a long-term prognosis, that he'd got to that 10-year space, and we were in Kununurra. I was working in a very large not-for-profit early learning years centre service that was over multiple centres with a lot of staff. So a big job, and I became unwell. So I had to be flown, the regional health systems are fabulous to a degree. And so I had to be flown to Perth to receive treatment. And my family were very much not keen for me to return and go that far back because I'd had a bit of a scare where they thought they were going to be potentially losing two parents very quickly. So out of respect to them, I suggested that it was time to pull out and remove and come back to Perth. And in that space, my husband, in typical fashion of being in those precarious health situations, took a fall, and it kind of preceded the beginning of what was to be a fairly short then. I did recover and have had full recovery. I did get more work down in the southwest doing what I do, but I felt it was not appropriate at that level of leadership to not be able to provide a return date. And I really needed time to I potentially rush back to work, not at a physical level, but potentially at an emotional level. So I decided to pull out and just spend a few weeks with my husband, which was very important and necessary, of course. And then afterwards, I've kind of come through that period, given that it's some 18 odd months, and there was all the talk of the elections and so forth. And I started to think, I don't know that I was ready to retire. I do know that I don't want to step back into the same field. I'm at the point in life where I've experienced a bit that has pushed the barrel as a person, and I want to be challenged now. I know I have the capability. I do have to reach out to the community to express that interest and let them make that choice as to whether they believe I have the capability. But I believe I've got the capability. Campaigning, I'm not very comfortable with talking about myself. Doesn't sound like it at the moment, but that's the reality. Am I any good at expressing what I can do, how I can do it, and that's over to the community to decide. So I've come about at this from the perspective that I know I can, I know I've got the time, and potentially I didn't want to retire the way I did. So there's stepping back into a field where I know I've got the ability to give back. I know I've got the advocacy work behind me. I know I've got an understanding of local government because I worked for the Shire. I know that I've got the ability to be very pragmatic as well. And that's why I think I was successful in my endeavours, not just in the regional town of Margaret River, but also in the East and West Kimberley, well, West and East Kimberley, because I'm very pragmatic. And so therefore I feel, and I have been told that people can see through the ability to have lip service. And especially our First Nations people on country up at the top end. And I was welcomed, invited into spaces that I was told was very unusual, and was able to advocate and be proactive in that setting. So that's why I've chosen to be a councillor now, and to offer my services to the community if they so feel that I am worthy.
You've been primed for being ready now, by the sound of things.
Way to put it, Paul. Hasn't the universe, if we want to get a bit woohoo, got an interesting aspect on how it navigates us if we're open to? I mean, I totally understand grief now on very many levels. The anticipatory grief of having somebody who's been unwell for a number of years, going through, is this actually real? He looks so well, blah, blah, blah. To the moments of how is this actually going to end? Is there an end date? Oh my goodness, the end date is very near, but there's no magic timeline, just a piece of string that's rather frayed. And yet I'm fortunate that I've come through the other side not being negative about that. I don't put that grief as in a closed bucket. It will walk with me now. It has shaped who I am now, as has all the work that I've done in the past. Everything in life, shapes us to become the person. Now, whether we accept that and walk with it, or whether we butt our head against it and fight it. And I'm not saying I've always been great at it. I understand the depths of the black dog, if you like. I understand mental health. I understand the importance of caring for oneself. And that's really tricky, particularly when you have been a person that's always been in the service of caring for others, whether that's on the home front or in the larger workforce life. As a teacher, I was a librarian in schools, so I was still potentially sharing my love of literature and working in that sphere, helping children and young adults navigate research. And so I took it very personally, that work also. And then, the early years setting with little people, that responsibility is huge. And understanding working with legislation and regulations and the Act of Parliament and all of that goes with it. And here I am now.
Excellent. So what makes you a great candidate, Amanda?
Maybe I've answered this.
Maybe
I've kind of answered this one already.
That's okay, no problem. So let's just have a quick look at the couple of sub points and see if there's anything extra you'd like to add.
So my current involvement with council is pretty limited, I must give you, to be fair. I don't have an active role in the council per se, other than, now stepping forward and attending meetings and so forth and getting my head into that space. However, on the ground, I am volunteering in spaces, as I have done and in the past. And so I'm very aware of what is required by council and Shire, but council in terms of linking residents with council work. So I'm very mindful of the needs of transparency. And I'm not saying that this council is not transparent. I'm just very aware and have been made aware of the need for communication, and whether that communication is delivered in a sense that wider majority can hear. Now, that's I'm still not throwing shade on the current council, because there is an element of community responsibility to listen. So if we're putting out messages, is it easier to have formulated an opinion before you've heard, or before you actively listen to what is being proposed or said, or, so it's sometimes easier to be a keyboard warrior and formulate an opinion that's based on potentially, not fact, more of an opinion, personal opinion that gathers steam when you are cold, are faceless. Bit tricky though in a small town, because we do kind of, those faceless people do have a known. And I'm not against keyboard warriors. I've had lots of communication, I feel, on the social media, and whether I've been able to contribute in a positive light is still up to the residents' own take on what I'm saying and what they can hear. And sometimes that's really difficult to hear if you've had a truly negative experience, and you're just going to come at any council matter with that cloud hanging over you. So for me, and I'm not sure if this is really answering your question, Paul, in regards to my current involvement, but what I would like to be seen or noted for is linking that bridge and offering a wider based communication effort. And potentially that is using social media a little bit more in terms of dialogue.
Yeah, that communication aspect definitely seems to be the holy grail, especially when you
Yes.
look at council market reports and all those sorts of things. So,
yeah, and I'm not a miracle worker. I have said that a few times. I'm not a miracle worker. I've just put my hand up to have a go. So I can only do my best and try my best. And at this point in my journey, if we want to use that language, that is what I'm hearing, that potentially matters are not being communicated or heard appropriately for a more positive view on some council matters.
Okay, cool. We'll move on to the next one, financial management capability.
This is huge, really, isn't it? It's a big part of being a council member or a candidate on council, for council, should I say. Yes, well, I have first-hand experience on owning a small business and all that goes with, and when I say that, I don't say it flippantly. I worked while my husband ran the business. I stepped down from full-time work as a teacher to support the business because it ran for some 27 years and it was of a rather large concern in terms of small business. And he'd owned the business, or we'd owned the business since the early to mid 80s, where business was run slightly differently. And so there was a bit of catching up when we got to the 2000s where he was moving into a field of bigger organisations wanting to use his services. So he had to have policies and procedures, particularly in the area of occupational health and safety. And so because I had worked with policy and procedure and had written policy for individual schools, but worked in that setting, I knew what would be involved in upskilling him and our business in terms of writing these procedures so that he could be accredited to work for petroleum-based business. So pretty big international companies working out of Perth and around and nationally Australia, but he had to be accredited to do that. So they had basically said, we want to the company to do the work, but you've got to prove your goods. So so inside that time that I spent in the business, I then stepped into all that was the finance side, working with the accountant and ATO, all those fun things in life. So that was at a business level. And then, so I do understand reading a budget and also then with working with the Shire, my own business unit had its own budget. And so I had to manage that to work inside that and so that I was accountable, even at that grassroots level, accountable to the community. I was very aware that this budget was not for my personal use or my staff's personal use. It was how we could use that at a business level in our business unit to make our service better. And it was to be better for the children and therefore the parents, the families that were using us, not just parents, the families that were using us, our service. So I've had lots of experience in that. Being a general manager of a very large not-for-profit early learning years centre that was not under the organisational guise of a larger business model. So we were standalone. I was the only paid member of the board. I had to manage and also write funding applications for grants because sitting in the Kimberley, there were masses of issues, and although it's perceived to be an opportunity to make money when you travel up there to work, the cost of living up there is exceptional, and so it's very easy to spend money. You don't necessarily come home with money if that was your endeavour to go away and work in those settings. So outside of mining potentially. So I was very much in control of the financial management of that business, and I was also successful in writing grants, not just here in Margaret River for the Shire of Augusta, Margaret River, but also in the top end of Western Australia. So I have that ability to write grants, and then also equitably spend the money. Even on a personal level, as a woman, realising that I was going to be in a position at a relatively young age of, as it turned out, 60, to be a single woman again. I had to understand financial literacy for myself personally, my financial literacy, and I had to understand how I was going to navigate that world moving forward, because there is a real sense of, and we know the stats of older women becoming homeless and not having the financial capabilities to navigate life moving forward through no fault of their own particularly. So you know, that shows no boundaries to your ability to work necessarily. So I had to understand, and I navigated that for myself, even at a personal level, went and took myself off and learned about where I was at and what I could do to maintain that before I felt I would be in a position of turmoil. So I believe I have a capability in the financial management setting that would involve me as a councillor.
Okay, fantastic. And then the other aspect we have there is relationship building capability.
I think that is also interesting three tiles you've put up, because I don't believe one is more important than the other, but they are equally as important as each other. And I would have said this to my staff in the early learning years sector, because I was the leader. I was in leadership position. In teaching, I entered my career in middle management, as you know, a lot of it's, you know, I wasn't working in the head office bringing down, enforcing legislation. I was working with at that upper level, but still inside the school setting. So in all of my, therefore, career paths, relationship building is paramount to navigating the world. There is no point in sitting back saying, I know all the answers, because I don't. So how am I going to learn? I need to be an effective, active listener. And that can be tricky in itself when you've already come with an agenda, because life experiences and skill sets will technically bring you there with an agenda. So to know how to, and I'm not always good at it, to know when to keep quiet, and to, as we were just discussing before, with you know, potentially community members coming with negative experiences and therefore formulating an opinion, it gets really difficult to hear what's being said. So building relationships is key aspect of what this role is going to require from me, and I think I can do that well. To be able to build, and this is something that's been highlighted, and I don't believe that necessarily your career choices make you a better candidate for council or not, but your life experiences inside potentially some of those. So the fact that I've been a teacher means neither here nor there to anything. The fact that I have the ability to manage potentially does, and to display leadership qualities. I'm not, and I have said this a myriad of times to my staff, if you want an authoritarian figure as your leader, you're not going to find it with me. So there are times when I've had to pull on the big trousers and make final decisions, but that's come from building relationships and building a capacity to provide wraparound services. And in the sense of the Shire, or the council, sorry, that will be building the ability to listen and advocate for wraparound services and listen to them, listen to the community, and understand where the concerns and the issues are lying, and then effectively communicate why and how the council have made decisions, so that there's a deeper understanding. And without building a relationship, without stepping out from behind your office door, let's say, or behind the computer screen, it's why I've chosen to do some Facebook posts of potential rambling. But there's got to be a face. There's got to be a face attached to the name that says, this is what the council has decided on the behalf of the community. If we've got a relationship that's been built, then we can say, on behalf of the community, because we know this information, because we've been openly in dialogue with you, this is the decision, the best possible outcome that could be achieved in this situation. Very important tile.
Oh, it is very much so. I did choose all of these questions based on, the legislative and experience that I've seen amongst the various councils. So, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on a little bit now to, I've got 4 different scenarios, and what do you see as the council's role and what drives your voting position? So I'll go through these. A newly proposed high-density development impacting amenity for residents in an existing low-density estate. So
this is a big one for Margaret River, because the Shire of Augusta, Margaret River. I shouldn't just say Margaret River. That's incorrect of me. This is currently a big one for the Shire of Augusta, Margaret River. We have seen exponentially a growth in our population, and that is putting stress on our amenities. So I didn't want to be rambling, Paul. I wanted to make some notes. So, and hopefully these notes make sense, because I don't want to just read off. That's not very relationship building. But rambling, it neither makes sense, doesn't make sense either. So when we're talking about high density development impacting amenities for residents in existing low densities, I would want to aim for making developments include green space, respect the culture of and the character of our area, and not to overlook local infrastructure like roads, schools, and community facilities. So there seems to be a little bit of an opinion at a local grassroots level that is being done. There is, and potentially that is being done. I'm not sure. I'm not privy to that information as a council level. But if for me, it makes sense that good planning also means genuine consultation. Residents should have a real say in the early phases of this process. We clearly are experiencing real population growth, and we all want to be about getting the balance right. So it's that balance where consultation comes in. that doesn't feel like, and again, I'm not privy to that information, but again, it feels to be a little bit lacking, that the balance is there between green spaces and infrastructure that's required to continue with this, to continue to grow. Growth is vitally important, but we can't make decisions without on the fly, just to react to what's occurring at this moment in time. We need to plan for the future as well when we're making these development decisions. So as a councillor, I would be focusing on achieving a balance between encouraging these housing developments that are well planned, integrating with nature, including the green spaces, and meeting the local needs. Now, at this point in time, I'm going to say one of the greatest local needs is pricing. Our price point of how we're going to build these developments for our community to be able to enter into the lack of housing is has a massive knock-on impact, which is clear. I'm well aware that we don't all just live here because we've chosen to live in a nice environment. Some of us are privileged enough to be in that space, and so that's why I really advocate for, because I've worked with inside Margaret River, the disparity of haves and have-nots. So is it beyond our capability to extend to to making sure everybody is well cared for within the community? A bit altruistic, I get, but at the same time, we can plan for cheaper housing opportunities that are going to potentially sit inside higher density developments, because we're not all going to be afforded the 1,000 square metres or 750 square metres of old. Some people don't want that as well, so we need to be actively engaging with that group to see how we can plan for this to fit and feel what it feels like in our community and the character that Margaret River, the Shire of Augusta, Margaret River offers. I think we can, as a Shire, plan for, we can play a vital proactive role in facilitating smart, sustainable growth. Now, I'm not saying that's not happening, because I'm not privy to that information, but that's where I see my role as a councillor would be. Sitting on that table, inviting others to the table to listen to their initiatives, and also planning ideas to promote growth or to work with the growth that we're experiencing, but providing also the needs of the community. So, like I said, affordable housing, infrastructure, roads, not putting stresses on our schools, taking those into consideration, all the other aspects that we roll right down to if we're thinking about people working in our society, because that's clearly what we're wanting to develop economic growth. So we need the workers to be here, and typically that's going to promote younger generations staying or coming and growing their roots and raising their children. So we will needing to look at childcares so that they can, stay and get out to work safely and knowing that their children are well cared for, if they have children. And then our workers that are coming here, do they have housing to live in, to promote all of that? So that's what I believe is my smart, sustainable growth. I think we can play an active, proactive role in facilitating that.
Excellent. Okay, that sounds a pretty well-rounded perspective on, and the question is about your perspective, not necessarily what the council is doing at the moment. So
yeah. Well, I know I made notes, and I do apologise for referring back to them. But like I said, I don't want to just be seen as this person that's going to go off on a tangent and ramble without it making it clear, well, as clear as I can in this setting, sense to the listener.
Excellent, excellent. We'll move on to the next one. This one's happening in Bustleton, city of Bustleton at the moment, but it happens all around the place. Restricting dog access to parks and beaches.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to, and I'm an animal lover. I've been a wildlife carer with fauna from, well, I'm not doing it actively at the moment, not participating or volunteering at the moment, but since I've come back, my hands have been a bit full. But prior to, when I moved down in 2013 and prior to going away to work, I was an active volunteer with fauna. I have many animals at home. I have a dog who you've probably heard and is being slightly destructive in the home at the moment. I'm not sure what she's chewing. Oh, it's one of her toys. It's okay. But coming from that aspect, I'm a firm believer in being a responsible pet owner. So restricting dog access to parks and beaches just makes sense. I do see that the Shire has a role in providing dog safe and dog restricted parks that are well utilised. So, you know, some shaded space, some trees, some activities for the dog, a water bowl, you know, plastic bag or the decompostable bags, bins, etc. But coming with that, just because the Shire may have provided that restricted area and that park, we as dog or pet owners need to bring a sense of responsibility to our ownership as well. So that means using the clean way up your dog or whatever animal you might take to this pet, but let's say dog, that's, you know, you've got to clean up after yourself. On lead, off lead, you need to be aware of other your dog's personality. I know it from experience. I've had a dog that was very easygoing while I was raising 3 children, you know, was being washed with beat to the sandpit sand and, you know, made ice creams for and all the bits, and never was reactive in a negative way in that setting. Yet on lead could be problematic on a walk. Was particularly possessive on lead about me. So I knew, and I would often have people coming up to me saying, oh, with their dog off lead, saying, oh, my dog's, you know, my dog's great, my dog's fine, don't worry. I was like, your dog's fine, mine's not. That's why mine's on a lead. So it's about, you know, and I know there's some harnesses now that visually tell you that story, but it's also about that being responsible and sharing that. And being able to have your dog off lead in a safe environment where they're not going to be, there's not going to be an issue on the road or to other, you know, kids in a park, or the safety of wildlife that's already on the beach. You know, our plovers hooded plovers at the moment are in breeding season. You know, really big really big concerns, and it's not hard for a responsible dog owner to play the part. Still go out, still take your dog to the beach and to parks, take walks along tracks that you're allowed to, but act in as an active citizen and be responsible. Is my point there.
Excellent. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Several local businesses apply to extend sidewalk dining areas.
Well, I did read this one and I thought, I'm totally for it. So I'm not quite sure so I'm not quite sure. I haven't looked at it from a negative point of view. I loved and so I'm not 100%. I'd be very happy to listen to what the issues might be. If the sidewalk area is not designed for safe dining experiences, I get that, but surely that's obvious and common sense. Are they two words that are not common? That's a rhetorical question. Don't ask, don't answer. But for me, we live in a town and a region that is all about tourism. It's all about enjoying the fruits of our life down here. And that might be sharing a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, watching the world go by, and, enjoyment of life. So I'm all for it, but like I said, be very happy to listen to what might impede the safety of that experience of extending the dining areas.
All right, wonderful. And the last of these four, a sporting group that leases council-owned facilities applies for funding, and I should put in there from the council, to expand their kitchen and dining facilities to commercial grade.
I did make some notes about this because this would be something that I could easily see being in the Shire of Augusta, Margaret River. Obviously, we have that magnificent Arts Margaret River facility, and also we have very large sporting, the City of Busselton do too, but my focus is, of course, the sporting facilities. I've reached out to each of our clubs, because I'm also mindful that the magnificent building that is Arts Margaret River offers a particular service. We now no longer have in Margaret River a community hall. So Cowarum has their community hall, which clear Augusta, but Margaret River doesn't have a community hall anymore. So in effect, we can't really share that space. And so each club is likely to want to potentially expand their kitchen and dining facilities to reach commercial grade. That's without question, commercial grade. So then your question is posed that they're reaching out to the council to support or to actually apply. Which way are you thinking, Paul? To support or to actually apply for them?
In the event that the council has like grants, funds, and that sort of thing to share with the community.
Yep. I would be very interested in supporting any grassroots organisation fair and equitably. So if they've already got, one might have, the latest of, and then another club is still struggling to find suitable change room facilities, let's just stab at something, then I'm going to say change rooms facilities potentially is of greater concern to me than a commercial grade kitchen facility. Now, I understand that a club offering commercial grade kitchen and dining facilities means that they could potentially be offering their members an experience to buy a meal after, and so therefore their long-term goal is to be more self-sufficient as a club. So that's going to take some weight to consider, but we must look at the safety of all members of these grassroots clubs, and not having adequate change room facilities is not very that's not providing safety for our children to be going in and changing and using facilities. That's not a purpose-built. And clubs have a responsibility to provide a safe space for children and youth and adults to be able to feel comfortable and also incredibly safe when they enter the facility to change. That's a given. So these are the things that I would be looking at as a councillor to weigh up fair and equitable provision of funding applications. And although I would love to say if we were across the board, and I'm not saying that we're not, but once I'm privy to that information, and if a club comes to me and says, this is what we're going to be looking at or comes to the council, I would be asking for data to show why, how, what the cost is, what their lifetime expectations of these upgrades are going to contribute back into the club, and where are other clubs sitting in terms of funding equity.
All right. Good rounded response there, Amanda. Thank you. We'll move on to the next one. So this is sort of a double-barreled question, and the second question that is even asked based on your response to the first one. So here the council seeks to increase economic activity within its borders.
Yep.
How do you propose for the council to facilitate the growth?
I
do have the other couple of things there. So just looking at characteristics of the council that might contribute, and where does the economic growth come from? So they may all be incorporated into one response. Yeah.
I did make some notes on this because clearly council needs to focus on attracting the right type of investments. Also, businesses that create local jobs would be obviously a high priority. Respect on our environment in the region, the Shire of Augusta, Margaret River, and ones that add to the character of our region. One that may consist, if possible, using local supplies first. It's not always possible, as I understand. And making sure our infrastructure, housing and community service are key so that our regions remain a great place to live is also a note that and live for us, a great place for us to live and work for all. So not just our young families, for all, whether we're a person with disabilities, whether we're marginalised, whether we're vulnerable, whether we're retirees, whether we're seniors, for all. So that's a big context that we have to consider when we look at economic activity. One area that I would like, and we kind of touched on it before, Paul, is for me, I would really like to seek out and support innovation. So I would like to look at the agri-tourism. So I don't want to forget, viticulture is at the front of our exporting and tourism sector in the Shire of Augusta, Margaret River, which, I do enjoy some wonderful aspect of our region. But I don't want to forget agriculture that underpinned our region for many, many years since, and I'm not going to quote you the date of the inception of the town of Margaret River in terms of agriculture. But looking at innovative ways that potentially we could look at blending agriculture and tourism together, and possibly fine-tuning some of the red tape to allow these processes to set up another line of for farmers to excuse my dog, to move into, as well as their farming. It may be something they're not interested in, but I'd be open to listening and supporting those sorts of initiatives. Obviously, eco-friendly industries as well would be a great one to look at and support and advocate for. One's eco-friendly, that industries that create work for us in the sector, so that we're moving away from potentially our fossil fuels and looking at innovations that create work and lead into other markets that promote our environmental stewardship, if you like, thinking about climate change and protecting our unique biodiverse region. So I think I did also say alongside that, I would also look at, be interested in looking at and supporting public and private partnerships. So that we could aim for developments that where the developer has a stake and investment in what they're providing for their company, but also giving back to the community. So in some way, whether that be providing some greenscape or space or the roundabout or something like that. So how would I raise the funds for this to come? Be pushing and advocating pretty heavily with the state and federal governments. Also, I mean, we've got a number of initiatives out there already, which, I did make a list of. So we would be, what have we got? Building better regions. My dog's telling me I've been waffling for too long. But there's, we could also be looking at philanthropic and other sponsorships that give back to the community. So there's lots of aspects that we just need to keep our minds open to, that square box and potentially a round peg, and how we're going to push parameters and think outside of boxes, because that's where some of our exciting opportunities are likely to come from. So I'm kind of a big picture person, and interested in exploring and developing those concepts.
Wonderful. So on the funding side, these are the subordinate questions about, what is it about your proposal that the potential funders would find attractive about that? And and the other one was about, like, how challenging will it be to attain the funding goal? And
yes, well,
success, so.
It's easy to say, we'll just apply for a grant, because everybody that are aware that there's grant applications available, and I've been in that position where you get a ping on your emails that says there's another one live, and you start looking at what the priorities are for being able to apply. Priorities is not the right word, but and so it's an easy one to say, we'll just apply for a grant. There's hours and hours of work to make sure that you have provided a detailed plan and application that could potentially lead to a positive outcome. And also having a strong budget that will, align with any potential blowouts, and that's difficult, really difficult too. I've been in a position where I've thought I had applied for a lot of money, and then as you kind of get notification pretty quickly back, and you think, well, why didn't I go for another 100,000? But if your budget if you're confident with your budget to a degree, because blowouts cannot always be have a dollar figure put on it that you think is realistic. They'll be inevitably wrong. That there's a lot of work that goes involved. So the challenge is enormous. There has to be somebody that is proficient and capable of writing applications without wafty language. It has to be appropriately written. Sometimes I've found the benefit in actually paying for somebody to write parts of an application to support my endeavours better, if that's the right way of putting it. I've not got somebody to write a whole application ever, but because I've been money poor, but sometimes you need to spend money to make money. And so if you've got the capacity, it could be wise to say, okay, we're going to put this out to a company to, write. I've had some come back once before that I thought I could have done a better job. And so I picked pieces out of it. So you've got to be wise as to who you choose as well. But I digress on that. So I understand the challenges. And what are the chances of success? That all depends on your application, Paul. So I have been unsuccessful once. And really, I threw the application together in the hope, but I didn't believe I was, for my business unit that I was working, the company I was working for, really had, I wouldn't have sat too comfortably if I had been successful, because there was a limited pot of money and I knew there were others in not-for-profit sectors that should have had rights to that money before a private entity, although I wasn't excluded from applying. So it really boils down to, what are your chances of success? Do you fit the criteria? And are you in the top echelons of that criteria, even though it doesn't exclude you or preclude you from applying? Is your application any good?
Fantastic. All right. We'll change gears a little bit here.
Okay.
So on these ones, we're not necessarily looking for a description of what they are. It's really just like, do you support them or do you not support them?
Yep.
Or
cool.
do you support them in certain circumstances and not others? So.
Okay.
Okay. So the first one, drag queen story time in our libraries.
Been to them, support them. Been fabulous. Experiences for little people, lots of fun for the adults. It's such a joyful event without the undertones that it might carry. Such a joyful event to watch people dress up and express their joy in reading a book. Little people, I've not known any young person with a family that have said to, let's just throw, said to their daughter their toddler daughter playing on the floor with a plastic hard hat, Bob the Builder, a high-vis shirt and hammer and nails, or hammer and, blocks, to say, you can't do that. It's not gender appropriate. Nor have I ever seen and have ramifications of, being excluded from. I've just never witnessed it. Nor have I seen the issues that have arisen from a little boy who's put on a apron, got into the kitchen alongside his mum and helped her prepare pikelets. I don't know, I'm just pulling, or peel an apple, or, prepare a fruit platter. I've never seen any negative connotations on one's sexuality, and nor am I aware of any data that would result in those activities, those dress-up experiences having any long-term impact on one's gender identity. And nor do I see here this drag queen story time being a reflection on a negative reflection, or having a negative impact on our little people. Just a joyful experience of loving literature.
Righto. We'll move on to the next one. Welcome to our acknowledgement of country.
For me, I mean, personally, I've said that I've worked and been welcome on country in the top of Western Australia, but equally in Margaret River. Spent a great deal of time working with the some Wadandi Pibbleman peoples. And I don't believe my privilege should impact my ability to reflect upon people who've walked here before me. So if it is culturally respectful to First Nations people for me to acknowledge and welcome, and the welcome to of country, and for me to acknowledge the country that we're standing on, then I'm right here for it. It's the least I can do. It's a very small part of what I can do to show that I respect and that I legitimately want to provide an opportunity for all of our community to come together and sit at the table and be listened to. So that's a very small sign of respect that I'm very comfortable with.
Okay, fantastic. The next one is biasing council purchases towards local businesses.
Okay, was that in your initial questions? Is that one you've tweaked on me? You may have done.
I've just changed the Shire/city to council.
Oh, okay. Because I did write some notes about yeah, I did. I believe the Shire, the council and the Shire have a responsibility to manage community assets wisely. Buying and selling should never be about speculation, and biasing council purchases towards local businesses could be seen about a speculative aspect. There could be speculation in the business, in the wider community. I don't know that that's necessarily a negative thing. However, it needs to be looked at across the board as being a benefit for our community. It should be about achieving positive outcomes, and the key is about transparency. We're doing this to support local business, full stop. Transparent. How is it? Ratepayers should always know why the council is buying and selling and what the long-term community gains will be. It's about strategic discussions, in my opinion, and that they serve the public interests, not the short-term profits. So how a local business is about to, going to use this this purchase.
All right.
In a nutshell.
Wonderful. Yes, we're looking for nutshells on these guys.
Yeah. And again, here, this is the council buying and selling land, and probably kind of fits in that aspect as well. I mean, I think I've touched on basically that answer.
Okay, wonderful. We'll go on to the last of these ones. When the evidence presented is not the full story.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that would be, Paul. That to me tells me that A, there's something to hide, or B, that the leadership aspect of the council and Shire, or the council particularly, providing an authoritarian view on the outcome. So by that I mean, in simple terms, what the ratepayers don't know won't hurt them. They won't understand the complexities. We don't need to tell them because it's only going to open up a minefield, all those sorts of aspects. Well, that to me is top-down tiered leadership. That's not what I'm about, and I don't believe that would that I would sit comfortably in at that table if we're talking about opening up a table space. So there'd be two aspects to that. There's something to hide, or we're treating the ratepayers as children who potentially wouldn't understand what the full story is all about. So therefore we'll just, not give them the details. Two areas that I don't sit very comfortably with.
All right, wonderful. I'll go back to just the two of us on screen there. and ask, because that's the end of the formal questions that I have. So in amongst everything that you've talked about, is there anything more that you'd like to raise before we close it out?
Yeah, Paul, thank you for offering that opportunity to me. I think what I would like the ratepayers to understand is that although I have a very strong moral compass and I have a deep desire for advocacy work, I'm also a very pragmatic person. So if I was going to talk about my husband and I, he was the romantic and I was the one saying, did you need to spend that money on X, Y, and Z? And sometimes my children would get cross with me too. Like, Mum, just accept the gift. But and not to say I don't like to be spoiled from time to time, but I'm always going to play the pragmatic person, that role. I'm always going to, well, not always, I'm likely to be play devil's advocate because my mind works better when I've got, in my opinion, the evidence. And sometimes we don't want to hear that evidence, but I'm going to look for it to say, well, this will, help me to reach a decision that I feel morally comfortable with. Now, that, that sits, heavily with key aspects like our Narrabut Resort disputes going on down here, or developments going on down here, with a big push to negate what the developers are potentially wanting to achieve. I am very much involved in the environment and looking out for it, but I also understand that the land was zoned in a way that the owner had the right to sell, as they have done. So it's very conflicting for me, and I need to be challenged with evidence to be able, as that pragmatic person, because if I was solely going to be the heart on the sleeve girl, I would say disaster, 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 disaster. But I have to look at both sides of the coin. I have to sit down and say the owner is doing nothing wrong ethically. They own the land, whoever the owner is owns the land, and it was zoned accordingly. Did the Shire potentially, or council, not look deep enough into the future to understand the impacts of that zoning? And that's where I see my role is, as a potential councillor in the future, is to make sure decisions that are made today have long-lasting effects for our future safety and generations. So that's the pragmatic in me.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Amanda. You've shared quite a lot, and some interesting things about your history, particularly, that
Thanks,
put you
Paul.
in a good place. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate this opportunity.
My pleasure. I'll go into closeout mode now, if that's
Wonderful.
that's okay.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.
So Forrest.Chat SoapBox grows if you share it as listeners, and I very much appreciate if you do that. There are some links that will be down in the description. That will be great if you could share those. If you are on Facebook, then Facebook has a little trick to it that if you type the ampersand symbol and highlight, then it will share it around to the people who are most likely to be interested in it. So it would be very much appreciated if you would do that, especially for this episode. I do have a transparency statement so that you can see where Forrest.Chat SoapBox comes from and what it's looking to achieve. And if you go through to the series introduction video, then you can either watch it or read the description, which is the transcript. So I encourage you to do that as well. And all of these endeavours do actually take some money and effort, and I would appreciate any support that you can provide to my efforts to get out the news about what's going on in politics. My goal at the moment is to get a paid subscription to a live streaming service, and I've got a couple of options there depending on how much funding I can raise. And the funding there, one is US dollars per month and the other's per annum, but the difference is one allows for audience members to call in and chat during the live stream, and the other one doesn't. So, looking at annual Australian dollar figures between about $640 and about $300. So if you are able to donate, that would be wonderful. I do not accept donations with conditions attached to them. So it is purely a donation that you're providing. And you can do that to PayPal using hello@Forrest.Chat, or if PayPal's not in your realm, then certainly go ahead with getting in touch with me at hello@Forrest.Chat, and we'll work that out. So thank you very much, Amanda, for being on the show today, and we wish you all the best with your campaign and your tilt at getting onto the Shire, the council, the Shire of Augusta, Margaret River.
Wonderful. I know it is a little mouthful. Thank you very much, Paul.